I first met Cameron when I was 22, and he hadn't cracked it as a producer then. He was producing, but he was producing flops, and lots of them, sadly. And then he got involved with a production called Side by Side by Sondheim, and it starred Millicent Martin and Julia Mackenzie, David Kernan and Ed Sheeran. And I was the understudy to both Julia and Millie Martin.
They had put the show together because they loved Sondheim and were doing it as a sort of a review, a homage.
It was a delightful gem of a piece, and no one knew who Stephen Sondheim was then.
First of all, I was flattered that anybody would do an evening of my songs. And secondly, the performers were so wonderful.
They did about 3 or 4 tryouts, and everybody in show business went. And all of them went, oh, it's marvellous. Of course, it won't run, but it's marvellous because it's Stephen Sondheim, it's too esoteric. I missed it. And I was then due to go to New York for the very first time, and one Christopher Biggins went in my place.
Cameron had to go to New York, so George Burke and I went along to see the production, and we absolutely loved it.
Rang me up in the middle of the night to tell me what it was like.
I rang Cameron from a telephone that you had to put coins in. Remembering he's in New York, and I had a pile of coins, and I'm pressing them in to talk to him, and I say, yes, Cameron, you must buy this, you must have this is the greatest show.
I then asked them over the phone, I said, well, describe the production to me. And they said 3 actors, Ned Sheeran, and 2 grand pianos. And I said, I'll do it.
It's the little things you share together,
swear together, wear together, that make perfect relationships.
the concerts you enjoy together,
Neighbors you annoy together, children you destroy together,
that keep marriage intact. It's not so hard to be married when to maneuver as one. It's not so hard to be married.
and Jesus Christ, is it fun.
The first thing he did, which shows his boldness, which I think is throughout his life, this boldness, he took this little show and he booked it for 6 weeks at the old Mermaid Theatre. And I thought, oh, Cameron, I don't think so.
As I came into the lobby, I heard Side by what?
The show went on, no advance.
From the day we opened, there were queues at the box office. That's all I can say.
You never knew what the next moment would be, whether it was going to be a ballad or a comic number or some of that. So the audience was constantly surprised, and also because they didn't know the songs. So that made it even more surprising.
Lord knows at least I was there, and I'm here. Look who's here. I'm still here.
The next thing we knew, the boldness of the man had taken us to Wyndham's Theatre, which is one of the most beautiful theatres in London. Then, of course, suddenly, Broadway.
It was fun going to America. It was much easier, of course, for Millicent Martin, Julia Mackenzie and David Kernan. They simply had to continue singing exquisitely the wonderful Sondheim songs they'd been singing for 12 months.
Ned Sheeran's sly energy informed the show and made it more than just a review. It gave it a flavor.
So I suppose I got a bit above myself, and I thought it had gone rather well one night. So I rushed off stage and hastily through the stage door of the music box to have a couple of vodka martinis next door. It was going so fast that I tripped and fell arse over tip into the gutter on 45th Street. Looking up at the stars, the crowd was still coming out of the music box theatre, and as they went past, 2 young men who in retrospect I can only describe as vicious queens stopped and looked down pityingly into the gutter, and one turned to the other and said, funnier than anything she did on the stage.
The songs came out as little playlets. So anyone who didn't know where they came from could actually enjoy their brilliance and tell the stories and the characters, which are so perfectly done.
I write songs that not for standalone purposes, but because they're part of action, either comic or dramatic. And that means the actors have something to play instead of just warbling.
I started Broadway Baby, and, I took it half tempo and approached it in a different way. I wasn't an old Broadway baby. I took it as a young aspirant, really. I'm just a Broadway baby, walking off my tired feet, pounding 42nd Street to be in a show. This tempo started and Steve came down the aisle and said, no, it doesn't, it goes, I'm just a Broadway.
She got very upset that I didn't like it, and she started to cry. And I thought, if doing it this way means that much to her, I must let her do it. And of course, she was right. It was spectacularly good.
Working for a nice man like a sick fella, a wise man, and a big time
So he just said, well, what do I know? I just wrote it.
It was an evening of individual, small triumphs, I think.
It was my first international hit. There were literally hundreds of productions of Side by Side around the world, which proved that the material was the great star of the evening.
Cameron suggested that we might do another Side by Side. So Steve and I had a lot of conversations about it, and I did suggest that we should make some sort of dramatic framework for it.
A tiny studio theatre in the centre of Oxford, an unlikely setting for the world premiere of a production by some of the theatre's most famous personalities.
The idea of a new revue with songs that I had written in the subsequent years seemed like a good idea, and Judy was very anxious, and she had this notion of how to tie the evening together.
And I suppose a little bit reminiscent of the couple in Follies, of the successful couple, and a young couple who thought they wanted what the older couple had, and then soon found out by the end of the evening that it probably wasn't the best thing.
One of the people that I immediately thought of was Clark Peters, who I obviously knew from Five Guys.
Be asked to step into Sondheim land, I was just like, whoa, okay, this is far more rigid and structured, and probably just what I needed.
And of course, fabulous Diana Rigg, who I'd done Follies with. These were the elder couple. It was a great show to do. Unfortunately, that company didn't come into London, and the next thing that happened was that we got an offer to do it in America at the Manhattan Theatre Club.
I got a phone call from him one day saying, well, we're going to do it in New York, Manhattan Theatre Club, and I think we're going to have Julie Andrews. So I said, well, be still my heart.
A few years ago, he cajoled me back to the New York Theatre to do a show of Stephen Sondheim music called Putting It Together.
Pardon me, is everybody there? Because if everybody's there, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding. I'd appreciate you going even more. I mean, you must have lots of better things to do, and not a word of it to Paul. Remember, Paul, you know the man I'm going to marry, but I'm not, because I wouldn't ruin anyone as wonderful as he is. Thank you all for the gifts and the flowers. Thank you all. Now it's back to the showers. Don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today.